players, and welcome back. And family has nailed it correctly. We just did that tight end backfill last week. Now we are doing late quarterbacks today. And one of the things that we're going to want to make sure that we have this show correctly is let's have a game plan. Let's not just artificially say, yeah, we're going to wait until, the 8th, 9th round before we start thinking about a quarterback. But actually, let's have a game plan about, what quarterbacks late in the process would be worth diving into. And for me, Bob, the short list number one answer is Justin Fields. Justin Fields, as a starter, has always been a top 5 quarterback. The Steelers have said that he is either going to be the starter or he's going to be released, and he's definitely a top 3 free agent quarterback this year, meaning he's going to get at least a chance to start. And if you can give me someone like that in the 10th round plus that's going to be a top 5 quarterback, I don't see how that's not a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And to me, he's the first name I want to put out there in this scenario.
Yeah, and to that end, I was talking about this player last week, and they had a great Senior Bowl, and we talked about last week potentially taking a chance on a rookie like Jalen Milroe, but he had a terrible Senior Bowl. It's showing that maybe he's not making his progressions, maybe he's not ready. But the guy that did have a good Senior Bowl,
Jackson, a little bit like Willis,
Jackson Dart out of Mississippi. Probably another target that's going to start climbing up these early best ball boards. Chiming into that as well, you have guys like Jack Beck from TCU and a couple of these other wide receivers that are going to start going up the board too. But I don't think it's a bad idea. And one of the things that I think is important to really kind of nail about about this quarterback, especially if you're going late quarterback, is to nail, a situation, not necessarily perhaps the starter per se right now, but to nail a situation. So for example, when I talk about this, a couple years back, we were talking about, Desmond Ridder, and you're going to think, Bob, this is a bad example, but it's a really good example for what we're thinking about here. So when Desmond Ridder came out of the back end of the season, he had a decent enough fantasy finish to the season, but wasn't like lights out. And so you were willing to take more chances on a guy like Drake London because Desmond Ridder looked okay. Desmond Ridder came into that season, didn't perform well. It was a wash. If you took Desmond Ridder in any of these drafts, it was a little disappointing, but it wasn't really anything, skin off your back because you were taking him pretty late. A guy that profiles and it's the same team, but a quarterback that I think profiles better than Desmond Ridder in terms of fantasy stock would be a guy like Michael Penix Jr. Michael Penix Jr. came in for Kirk Cousins at the back end of the season.
Okay.
He showed that he has some stuff. He showed that he has the capability to perform at a good to better level than Kirk Cousins was performing at times. It's on a team that has a solid running game, so he's not going to be asked to be super prolific, but you can reasonably position yourself that on any given day that a guy like Michael Penix Jr. will be capable of doing 225 and 2 touchdowns. And if I can get that at the back end of my draft to be a safety net to when I'm taking chances on quarterbacks like Justin Fields, where the situation might be a little bit more flexible, it's always something to keep your eye on. And I think that, positioning yourself with a rookie, with a playmaker, and with a stable option gives you, and again, none of these, especially when we're thinking about these quarterbacks, Joe, our goal is to see where do they have the capability to put up 25, 28 points. And teams that move the ball, you want a team that's moving the ball. You want a team that's going to be in the red zone. And so when you're looking at these teams, that's where maybe we fumbled the bag a little bit on a guy like last year when we were taking back-end quarterbacks like Danny Dimes. But the thing about Danny Dimes is he was capable of putting up 20 points or so, but the situation never materialized for that to happen. So, I'm willing to take some chances on guys. I would love here, Joe, for this to either be Saquon or Bijan.
Not Gibbs.
Either one. Gibbs, I'm okay with.
Bijan's knowing my answer. All that answer you just gave about putting Penix on this roster late, I'm good with that.
Now,
So hey, just for a logistical
yeah.
answer, a couple people saying it was hard to read before. So the trade-off you're going to get with that is we're zooming into the first 8 picks. We're not going to be able to see the back 4 teams. We'll be able to do that later.
You're gonna
This
have
way,
to
it's
show
much
those.
easier for you to read. Bob,
You're,
logistically between us, you're going to have to tell me who you want to see, and I'm just going to do a search on them.
well, can you just
That's just
not?
going to
Can
be
you
our
like?
internal logistics.
I mean,
Okay.
logistically, I need to be able to read it so we can see who's still available.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're going to have to tell me names, so I will search them to be able to tell you if they're still
But
available.
yeah,
You're just going to be ahead of it.
in terms of this beginning of the draft, I don't think we want to be too crazy. It's interesting to see Gibbs fall to 5 here, but I'm not surprised. The reason I'm not surprised by Gibbs here is losing an offensive coordinator, losing the defensive coordinator. You still have a great offensive line. You still have great offensive skill position weapons, but you've got to figure out, well, there's a couple question marks on how that offense might work in the future. We'll see what happens. But in terms of craziness here, Joe, I know you're not a big basketball guy, but Austin here, wild trade this weekend happened. Luka Doncic, one of the premier players in the league, also deals with a lot of injuries, was traded to LA for basically peanuts. Anthony Davis, older Anthony Davis, Luka's 25. Now, I got to ask you this too, Joe. When it comes to the NFL, we just had Myles Garrett come out and say that he doesn't want to be on the Cleveland Browns anymore.
Sure
and I know we were texting back and forth about that. Thinking about trades that could potentially happen this offseason, a Myles Garrett to a team like Washington or to Dallas could definitely buoy the capabilities of certain players and frameworks, because if certain teams start to put together defensive pressure, it could benefit those offenses that we're looking at. So I think that when we go into these first couple of rounds, I'm not looking to be a huge mystery about who we want to take. There's going to be a lot of good players out there. In terms of rookies, Joe and I, of course, the premier rookie is Ashton Genty. You always want to get a player of that caliber coming out. But again, when we look at all of these prognostications for all these different websites that you can go to look at, where the draft board lies, Genty's going, maybe 20, maybe 15. I mean, there is
maybe
so much.
Dallas. Maybe you're looking at somewhere like Denver.
Joe, I need you to zoom out on this, because this is not. It's not working for me. I need to see the whole board. And I know it's going to be kind of spicy, but yeah.
All right, so that's all
better.
but 12, Bob.
Yeah, if we're missing just the 12th, I'm okay with that.
Right.
And looking at it too, like guys like Josh Jacobs this year, Joe, weren't profiling real well coming into the season. New team, but it didn't matter, because the way that the Packers ended up using Josh Jacobs was an elite level in terms of fantasy production. So I'm also looking at situations like that this year and what can happen. So just
Bob,
your head
by ADP and by what I want, here's the next 2 on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it was JT, Ladd, and then Bucky were who I would want. Consolation prize being Higgins, because I do believe wherever Higgins goes, Higgins is going to ball out. Higgins in Washington would be so spicy.
He would be extremely spicy. Washington has a lot of money to burn. That's why I mean, a lot of us are talking about Washington, but I think
it's also a very attractive place. But to me, this answer should be Bucky.
Yeah, I want Bucky. I'm okay with that. The reason I want Bucky is, even though the offensive coordinator changed, they really made they made it a goal to run the ball. Whether that was
he's clearly their best one there. So we go ADP. We look here. Tyreek's on the board. That's very enticing to me. Scary Terry and Najigba are the ones that I would be willing to look at based upon the board and who's there. So of those 3, do you have a desire?
I can't.
Go hustle.
All right, let's take Tyreek. I'm not a huge Tyreek guy this year, but I think that in the 3rd round there, granted, he's a little bit older. The situation wasn't great for him this past year, but I do think he has the strongest output in terms of potential.
Mhm.
Now, Jackson Smith and Jigba was really buoyed this year. If it were a full PPR league, I would be real heavy on Jackson Smith and Jigba there. But it being a half PPR league, I'm really looking for a guy that could break open the top. And while Terry McLaurin is nice, and while JSN is nice, they need a lot of receptions. Jackson Smith needs a lot of receptions to get there. So I'm okay with rolling the dice on Tyreek, knowing that we have two pretty stellar point options at the running back position. You know, I didn't know Brees was there.
I wouldn't have taken Brees ever. Brees
I
Hall is
might
dead
have
to me.
considered that.
There's no scenario you're talking me into Brees Hall at all, ever. Brees Hall is dead to me.
I think I could.
Maybe it was the 5th round.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do here, Joe, is I'd like to run it back with another wide receiver.
Absolutely. Here's the short list I got.
Now, remember, guys, if you're watching right now, what we're doing is we are specifically avoiding taking an early quarterback. That means we are avoiding all quarterback options 10th round
before the 8th round.
Okay. I thought we wanted 10th round or above.
I think we start looking around 9.
Yeah. So starting in the 9th round, we'll start looking. But, so if you see us pass on Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, there is a reason why we're doing that. And obviously this is a 12-team draft, but for viewing pleasure, so you don't have to squint or anything, we're rolling on the 11 picks there.
Yeah. So, Bob, here's kind of the short list looking at ADP-wise. Now, granted, this is ADP so subject to change.
Yeah.
But given the fact this is best ball, I'm looking at JMO, Metcalf, or Rishi Rice. Metcalf being the lowest of the.
I see what you're rolling out. I'm there with you. I do think JMO is a fantastic option if he makes his way back around. I'm also
Worthy's also under consideration.
Yeah, I'm not going to pass up on Worthy. I'm not going to pass up on Mike Evans. Also, insofar as that's true, you and I argued last week about a guy like Chris Godwin. If Chris Godwin's there in the 5th round as a 3rd wide receiver, I'm not going to put that down. But I think JMO is what is going to be an elite target right here.
Yeah, JMO just went. We disagree on Pickens.
I don't want Pickens anywhere near this roster, But if you're building Justin Fields later, I think it's okay.
I'm definitely building
George
Fields
Pickens. Tyreek. The reason
Waddle's still there. Zay's there.
I don't want Waddle. I don't want Zay. I don't think Zay in a best ball is like anything that I really kind of want to touch, knowing that how he's been used.
Devontae Adams.
Yeah, Devontae Adams has potential for me at this position.
Dunze there, but I don't want a Dunze.
Devontae, Mike Evans.
Evans has gone.
He must be at the 12th guy.
Yep.
I am willing to take a chance on a guy like DJ Moore as well. I know you don't want Odunze. I assume DJ Moore went already.
Yeah. So consider the DJ Moore went 212.
Yeah, so I think and again, I'm looking at the board here. Tight ends is an option here too, Joe.
I think that I want to go Devontae and then Pickens.
Okay. I'm okay with Devontae. Again, just like you feel like you can never be talked into Brees Hall, you cannot talk me into George Pickens.
Well, this is the argument for Pickens. The argument is this.
I don't think there is an argument. That's what I'm saying. I don't think there is.
It's situational. First, you cannot fight a situation. He's the only real receiver in the Steelers.
Yeah, but he didn't do anything.
He did not do anything. Well, last year he had more yardage taken away from him due to penalties.
But that doesn't matter. Sometimes he caused the penalty.
While I understand that, it is unlikely to duplicate that. That is a statistic that fluctuates.
Yeah.
So he still did have fantasy points going his way. They just weren't able to be converted. The hope is that they get converted.
I get that, but like the Steelers run such an inefficient system that it doesn't, without any significant changes, that I don't want to. I really don't want to lock many best ball line, and I'm okay with like 2 or 3. Like
to me, Fields is a significant change.
No. I get that, but I don't want to lock myself into too many drafts. And this is a portfolio EV thing. I don't want to lock myself into so many George Pickens in the mid rounds here, because here's the thing. It just doesn't track that he is going to be a significant that he's going to continue to grow significantly. So like looking at all these people coming after him, maybe you say, oh, well, taking the chance on the rookie there, like I positioned, I said, well, maybe you take George Kittle there if you're not backfilling tight end. All of them have questions. So George Kittle's is tied to health. Devontae is tied to age. We have two older wide receivers here that maybe are in the twilight, but still good options in their career. But one of the things about George that, I was talking about this season where I was okay to go into George and okay to go out of George in certain respects is that he got a decent amount of targets for the most part from Fields at the beginning of the season there. When they transitioned to Russ, those targets didn't really change. But there's not especially because it's a half PPR league, the upside for him was just not there on a week-to-week basis. He had a great game against the Jets. He took advantage of Cincinnati, and basically that was in Washington. Those were three of the worst performing pass defenses in the league.
Okay, so you're right. So the guy just went there was the guy I was hoping to get there was Tracy. So for this upcoming pick, I got Travion Henderson is who I'm looking at to try to get. My fallback, if I can't, is Ayuk. I'm not really a big. What's that?
Question.
Ayuk or Shakira. Those would be the two that I'd be looking at.
Okay.
But Henderson being the one I want the most.
Again, I don't think you can pair up a low floor with a low floor. I don't think you can pair George Pickens with Khalil Shakir. I don't think there's any benefit to that.
All right. Ayuk is a high floor guy. There's no, but Henderson's the one I would want the most if he's still on the board. So he is.
Yeah, I'm okay with rolling Henderson on this pick, and then looking.
Well, let's talk about the next pick because it's going to come quick. So, like I said, I'm leaning Ayuk on the comeback. Maybe the Hawk if you want to pick up the tight end now.
No.
Jalen McMillan's intriguing to me on the board.
Yeah, take Jalen. I like Jalen. I think that we're not going to get a chance to get him on the comeback.
We definitely won't.
I'd rather have Jalen than
Ayuk.
Than Ayuk.
Okay.
I think that Ayuk's in an okay enough situation. But one of the things that we have to think about when it comes to Brandon Ayuk is that even when he was healthy this year, nothing really materialized.
No,
and maybe that was the product of how he was treated or how he treated the team earlier in the season. But again, coming back from a torn ACL, torn MCL.
Oh, there went McMillan, son of a bitch. All right, so
how early is it for a guy like Ricky Pearsall, Joe?
Pearsall's a little far down. I'm leaning either Hawk or Andrews or Jonnu Smith.
I don't know if we want to do that. Laporta's gone.
Or is he the top tight end right now is the Hawk.
I know, but is Laporta?
Well, Ayuk was Bob. There's a lag on here that you got to go quicker with.
Well,
I've been trying to tell you this for weeks now.
Yeah, but
Ayuk was top on the queue, so he's who went.
Don't load up players that suck on the top of the queue. Just stop doing
Bob.
that.
If not, we were going to get well, there went the Hawk right there. So
yeah, what I'm saying is when you're loading up that queue, knowing that there's a lag, don't load up players that I say I don't want.
Then start talking 5 picks in advance about who our pick's going to be.
Okay.
This is on you to be prepared.
Well, I told you Jalen McMillan was the pick. He went right before.
But we didn't have a second.
So, I mean, that's where it is. So, I mean, that's going to submarine this team pretty significantly.
See, I don't think that your number 4 receiver is going to submarine anything.
I do when he's going to get continuous zeros. One of the things.
He's a boomer. But the one thing about this receiving room so far, with Tyreek and Ayuk and
And here's
Devontae
the
Adams,
thing too,
when they
Joe,
boom,
is
they're going to boom.
but here's the thing. I like the idea of these boom candidates. I'm not going to write that off, but you can't take two wide receivers that are super inconsistent in George
I think you
Pickens and
can when
Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk and George Pickens are going to be super inconsistent this year. Their quarterbacks are not. Their offensive coordinators have proven that they do not want to use these players in a capacity that is meaningful for fantasy football. So
See, I disagree with that because Ayuk was a fantasy god 2 years ago
on players that are not that this season. I'm not saying last season or the year before that.
Well, he was hurt.
This season, Joe. Even before Ayuk was hurt, he didn't do dog shit. Okay, he had one game, week 5, of 147 yards. The rest of the year, he's putting up 20 yards, 40. You can't 6 points from your guy in the 7th round you can't do that. I mean, I would have.
You can if you catch it late.
I would have rather taken Shakir. I'd have rather taken Downs. At least I know that they're capable of getting me 6 points.
Oh, see, this is just a fundamental disagreement on how to build the team. I'd rather get 30.
I'm saying it's a fundamental disagreement on how you think Brandon Ayuk is good.
Well, that's another thing that
I think that's the fundamental.
So right now, if he's still on the board, I want to take Jonnu Smith.
I don't.
I don't know if he will be on the board. It'd be a little bit of him dropping ADP wise.
Unless you're going to build who you think Miami's quarterback is going to be, I don't think Jonnu is a wise pick.
Oh, see, I actually don't have a problem building up Miami
because the thing is that it was very clear this year that the thing that hurt Tyreek the most was the fact that most defenses used cover 2, not cover 2, but 2 high safeties against
cover 2.
Miami, right?
Yeah.
So Jonnu benefited from that. But if Jonnu's going to continue to eat, maybe they continue to do that. I don't know.
Well, here's another name that's right around the same ballpark. Since we know we're putting Penix in this lineup, is Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, I'd rather have Darnell. I'd rather have Darnell and Pearsall, to be honest with you.
All right, if we can make that happen, that's our roster.
Because
then all right, so we need a third in case. So when we look at ADP, your top 3 right now, ADP wise, are Jonnu, Mooney, Pearsall.
Yeah, I think you can lock in. I think you can build in.
So you're getting one of them, at least.
I think you could build in. I think I'd like to take here Mooney, and then hopefully we get one of the other 2 on the comeback.
Your Pearsall Smith. All right.
Yeah, because I think we've proven that, we don't have to really climb too far up for tight ends. It's very capable in these next couple of rounds to build a tight end and quarterback combination. We've spread the board pretty wide on the wide receiver market that we can pair up a couple of the. I mean, honestly, to tell you the truth, if we're
Mooney's a decent floor guy.
If we're going to be taking what we think is going to have 2 wide receivers, maybe in round 10 or 11, Brock Purdy is our guy. Knowing that we'll have potentially 2 of the 3 weapons from San Francisco.
I might as well throw Mason in too then.
But you didn't take Pearsall. You took Jonnu Smith. I don't know why. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep doing this?
because I had Ayuk.
Yeah, I know, but what I got to ask you this: what do you think is a better proposition? Do you think it's better? There you go. There goes Brock Purdy. So it doesn't matter. But so I mean, building off of that, what would you think is the better possible combination of points? Ayuk, Pearsall, Purdy, or Tua, Hill, Jonnu? Because I think that's where something like this where you have to
see. I think it's Jonnu. And the reason is because Jonnu can be a top 5 tight end every week. Pearsall would have been fighting. It only really would have connected when our floors broke. Because I don't see Pearsall as the kind of guy who can break the top off.
I mean, Pearsall did. I mean, he got 24, 30 points. I mean, he scored.
But he's not going to do it when Ayuk is on stride, is my point. I'd rather
put all saying, but you're operating under the assumption that Ayuk is going to be on stride. And I'm operating under the assumption that he is not.
See, I don't think you give him the contract unless you think he can be. Unless you're going to give it to him.
Yeah, but the fact remains is that he's coming off, a significant knee injury.
Oh yeah,
And
no, I ain't fighting that
he's
part. So
26 and he's already not consistent. So that's the thing. Like going back into 2023 in a half PPR league here, Joe. I mean, he performed really well. But again, he's topping off in 2023. His highest point total was 24, but he usually ended up in that 13-point range or lower. So, when you look at a guy like Pearsall, does he have the capability to do that too? Absolutely. When you look at a guy like George Pickens, I mean, you in the last couple of rounds, you basically drafted the wide receiver.
yeah, but here's what I'm looking at here, Bob.
And I don't think the situation
Was the replacement to, and this is my argument for the situation. Pearsall is the replacement for Debo. They're basically the same.
I get that.
Jennings was the replacement to Ayuk, and Jennings went off. So it basically the argument is, do I think Jennings is going to beat out Ayuk for the starting job? And no, I think Ayuk's going to have it.
I mean,
I think Ayuk's going to get that production.
All right, so we're in round 10, Joe. This is the round where I said that we're going to begin to think about quarterbacks.
And I think Penix is the right pick.
A bunch of quarterbacks came off the board.
Either Penix or Brian Robinson Jr. are basically where I want to look right here.
Okay, Penix is the best quarterback available.
Of the ones we discussed, this is where his ADP comes up.
Perfect. All right, so we'll take Penix here as our first quarterback. I know it's not a sexy option, guys, but as we said, we're building a team so you can see what it's going to look like using certain strategies. So now we're taking late quarterback. We could have taken Jalen Hurts, and our team probably would have been better. We could have taken Josh Allen. Our team definitely would have been better. But we're trying out some strategies for the people. So
I still disagree with that because I think Fields is going to be a top 5 quarterback, and I think we're nailing this.
I'm not saying that Fields is a bad pick. That's not what I'm saying.
I think Penix is but to go off your point, Bob, I think Penix is a very solid floor for what we're building here. I wouldn't mind doing Leggett on the comeback here.
I'm curious if Penix is here. I'm curious of a potential of a if you want to get Leggett here, we build Penix, Leggett, and we look at in the next round after that a Tua or a Bryce, or we look at if Tank Bigsby hasn't gone off the board, taking Penix and then Bigsby.
Bigsby's here. I definitely just saw him.
Because I mean.
I have no problem doing Penix Bigsby. I'm fine with that.
We could also do Penix Tua, but I think Tua waits a little bit longer if he's not already taken.
Tua's ADP is going to go would have him going at the end of the 11th.
Okay, so all right, that's fine. So if we
take it, I think Penix Tua is fine.
You want to do 2 quarterbacks here?
We would miss out on Bigsby though.
I'd rather.
Currently, our running back room is Bijan, Bucky, and Trayvon. So Bigsby is probably not getting a lot of play anyway.
Well, I'd rather have Bigsby in the off chance that Travion Henderson doesn't perform as many people.
Well, then do you want to roll the dice on Penix coming back to us? Or Tua coming back to us?
Let's go Bigsby here, and then Penix in the 11th.
Okay, and then if Tua makes it, Tua makes it.
Yeah, if Tua makes it, Tua makes it. But I mean, Tua is definitely one of those quarterbacks that is capable of throwing up 30 points. The only problem is that will he be healthy? So he definitely has a higher ceiling than Penix for sure. There goes Keenan Allen. That's pretty late for Keenan Allen. I like that.
So which one do you want, Bob? Their ADPs is 2 apart. You're only so Penix first.
I like Penix a little bit better.
All right,
especially
we do got a couple of Atlanta guys with Darnell Mooney and Bijan here. So
especially considering Penix is healthy, no question marks about health right now.
And then again, on the comeback pick is where we're going to take Fields. He's going to be a little bit. He arguably might be a little bit of a reach at that point. With his ADP at 67, we'd take him at 46. But we don't risk losing him.
Honestly,
the team was built around it.
And guys, this is the thing about this specific lineup that we have here. We don't have a lot of rookies on here, but again, when we see these, you've got to think of also the hit rates of rookies as well. Is many of the rookies outside of the super standout rookies that we've seen in past years of like Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, we've had just as many that don't hit and kind of end up in that middling range of players that we are drafting at this point in time. So I'm always willing to take a chance on a rookie, but also, when you're using a strategy like we're using today with a later quarterback strategy, you are missing out on a couple of these later rookies, but we are going to take some. So don't worry about it. A lot of the ones that are still out there have a chance to really perform really well. I'm not seeing that Beck's name came up yet. He could be a really good, interesting option.
Which one?
Beck, Bech, which is ADP right now on
his ADP is 220.
All right, so we could probably wait a little bit on him.
Oh yeah.
And then, but maybe not, because he had a good Senior Bowl and stuff like that. So. Also, Joe, where are you seeing? I'm curious if there goes Travis Hunter. Where did Stephon Diggs go? I'm just really curious about Diggs. I know he's an older player.
Diggs went at 10-8, 116 overall.
Okay, I mean 31 years old, coming off an injury, not a great option. Got Yoshi still on the board, I think. Yeah, I'm definitely okay with a guy like Leggett, and if Tua falls to us here, and again, like the Tua.
So Leggett just went, so Leggett ain't falling to us.
Okay. So do we want to do Coker and Bryce Young, or do we want Tua if Tua's there?
I want Tua because we have two Miami Dolphins already. We got the stud.
Do we want to throw Coker as the other guy on there, or Yoshi?
I think I'd rather do Tua and Fields be these two, and just not do, and just basically not do Carolina, which in general works out.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, they performed well from a fantasy perspective.
What I worry about Carolina is obviously they have a ton of needs on defense. Their offensive line was good enough to run behind, but Leggett was their first pick last year. They actually traded in the first round to go back and get him, so they're into Leggett. What I worry about with them is, do they use a pick to upgrade Coker, and Coker basically be relegated to nothingness? Because they did have Deontay Johnson there. The assumption's Thielen's leaving, but Coker only really did stuff when Thielen was out. So that's my fear on Coker. I'm not sure how stable he is in the pond.
Okay.
So building the roster for right now, players that are like slightly downfield. Coker's one of the guys named there. I wouldn't mind taking Freiermuth, knowing that we took Pickens. Or took to Fields. Jalen Wright's not a guy I would mind throwing in the lineup.
I mean,
obviously, I got Mason and Beck on very far back ends. Some other guys, again, knowing that this is best ball.
I mean, I think it would be smart for us.
I like the iOS. Yoshivas, I think you just said him a little bit ago.
Yeah, I think it'd be smart to take a chance at a wide receiver here in the likes of. I'm just going off of Draft Sharks to just make sure I get my names right. Beck, looking at Jaden Higgins from Iowa State.
Alec Uwamora is the top-rated rookie left. Then is Jalen Royals. I'm just reading the rookies.
I was just gonna say Royal as well. I'd be willing to take a chance. Like these next.
So wait, but on those sites, are they projected to be a second-round guy or higher? And the reason I say this is, in general, unless you're a second-round guy or higher, you don't produce as a rookie. I mean, that is a historical fact. You look at all the guys who went off last year; they were all second-round guys or higher.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of teams need some defensive line help and some stuff. So I'm not like.
No, talent dictates where you go in the draft. That's regardless of need. If you're talented enough to be a first round guy, the latest you fall is to the second.
No, I got you.
So is Royals going to do that? Because if he's not, I'd rather roll the dice with an Yoshivas.
Yeah, I mean, it tracks. Again, I just want to take like one of them, right?
No, I'm totally fine putting Beck on this roster. I am not complaining about that. I'm just looking at because we're at the turn, so you got to kind of just take your guys here. Jalen Wright's the one I'd want to take with this pick. I think he's going to blow up this year.
I mean, so Iomar is slated. Again, this comes from some of the draft stock websites and stuff. To go in the second round.
How about all right? So if he's the second round guy, I'll pick him over Wright.
Back end second.
All right.
Then you've got Savion Williams in the third.
What about Royals?
Royals in the third, potentially going some. This website, Tankathon, has him going to the Bengals.
Ooh.
And Jaden Higgins is projected to be
so
87.
Do Wright and then one of the two rookies? Do both the rookies?
I think I'd like both the rookies instead of Wright.
All right, then we'll take the one with the higher ADP first and the one with the lower ADP second.
Yeah. And right here, the reason I say Beck is because he had a good standout Senior Bowl performance, shows that he can play against talent that's there. And again, with these rookies, they can be put into terrible situations. Like if you go to the Packers, it's a terrible situation in terms of ability to play.
doubt the Packers are going to do that to anyone. All right, so Bob, just to kind of round out my thoughts on our running back room as far as our goals here, knowing that there are 4 rounds left. Our quarterback room is done. We have 3 of them. We got Penix, Tua, and Fields, mostly for stacks. Our running backs are Bijan, Bucky, Travion Henderson, Biggs. I would like to throw Jordan Mason in that crowd, maybe Jonathan Brooks. Our receivers, Tyreek, Devontae, Pickens, Ayuk, Mooney, Amora, Royals. You can make an argument we might be done at receiver. We have 7 of them.
It's very, what we got going on there is not something that is sexy by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, it could be. If Tyreek and Devontae Adams are what they were.
But I do,
we need some tight ends, what we don't have. We only have Jonnu.
That's fine. Sitting here in the 15th round, sitting there with 4 running backs, I think it would be smart to potentially go after another running back. Your guy Jalen Wright just went. Go after another running back, a couple more wide receivers, and finish out with tight end. We do need another 2 tight ends, I believe.
We do need 2 tight ends.
But I do want to have overwhelming potential in the wide receiver room, especially because we're not guaranteed that Tyreek is going to play a full season. We're not guaranteed that Adams is going to be in a good situation. And again, I have some reservations about both Ayuk and Pickens in terms of production. So if anything were to fall through, I do want to have potential. Whether that potential ends up turning into points right now, that there's something to say about that.
Well,
but
so in that we got 2 rookies. Like I said, it all depends on how you believe about Ayuk. I believe
I just don't believe in Brandon Ayuk, man. I see I see where you're going. I see what you're trying to hit, but I'm just not there. I'm just not there yet.
So I would make the argument for this pick to be Mason and then Gesicki.
And even, I get the love for Mason too, but there's a very good chance that he doesn't see the field. With the way.
No, I get it, but I'm looking at all the other running backs on the board. We're basically down to rookies that aren't going to see the field at all. They have no chance of doing it. Like you're on that site right now. Where's Woody Marks getting drafted?
Woody Marks. Yeah, Woody Marks isn't getting drafted super high.
Yeah, so Mason has a better chance. The other part is I actually see
but here's the thing. Ready, Joe? From what we said earlier, Mason has a chance at the beginning of the season, but it comes down to it that as you project forward through the end of the season, I'm not thinking really that much about the beginning of the season, but I do want a performer that could potentially see the field later in the season. If injuries were to come in, we already know.
Time.
I know, but we already know that Mason is also kind of an injury-prone guy as well. If you want to take the chance on him, I'm okay with that. I am. But
I'm just looking at the rest of the board. I'm not seeing anyone else that's a game changer. Like, do you want the Devontae Hopkins or DeAndre Hopkins?
No.
Me,
I understand where you're going. I'm not saying it's a bad pick. I'm just saying that I just don't think it's as a trustworthy of a pick as you do.
Well, yeah, I'll also look at this. I don't need to be a trustworthy pick. I got Bijan, Bucky, and Trayvon. You know?
I no, that's where I'm at. I mean, like,
and Tanks Bigsby's probably a starter all year long.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get sicky. I was hoping for that. All right, so we could go Jonathan back here.
Yeah, I'd like to get the Rook.
All right, Brook it is. You loved him on Senior Day. Let's see him pan out. And then basically, we're just throwing in late. We're back. We did late quarterback and backfield tight end, Bob.
I know that's what family said here. Backfield tight end with late quarterback. We're sitting here at round 17. So the two of the next three picks
are tight ends.
Are going to be tight ends at round 18, 19.
And Jonathan Brooks is going to get sandwiched in between them.
Yeah, if Brooks is still there, I'm totally willing to take a chance on Brooks again in this draft.
And that will put us at a team dynamic of 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 8 receivers, and 3 tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, there is
magic numbers.
Like in regular best ball scenarios, not doing the early stuff, there is kind of a law of diminishing returns on taking too many wide receivers. But I think insofar as it's true for these early contests, I do think hitting and hoping on some of these rookies, as well as some, I was talking earlier about when we took TreVeyon Henderson, we didn't have a lot of rookies yet. Here we ended up with 3 rookie wide receivers.
Basically, so put it this way. If any of them become a second-round pick of the Bengal, you win. If any of them become George Haynes' replacement, we won. Period.
Yeah, I think
because that guy will instantly jump up to be an 8th pick in the draft come August.
And insofar as that is true as well, I think that a lot of players, say for example, if you end up on Washington, if you end up on Dallas, you have a really good potential to see the field a decent amount. And like, I'm not expecting, like I said earlier about these rookies, I'm not expecting, 800 yards. I'm more saying that there's a chance that in a given week that these rookies could spike 12 points. And in a half PPR league, if you're getting that out of your 4th, 5th guy as kind of as a spike, that's a good enough spike for a 4th, 5th guy. Where my trust is not in like a guy like Pickens, because we haven't seen the true like game-breaking spikes that we want to see out of a guy like George Pickens.
We saw in the wild card game. He put up 23 in the wild card game.
He did, but I'm saying like that spike again, that was in the playoffs. It didn't really help us. So
no, I get you, but my point is, it is in there. Like
it's there, but again, like it was there because the Steelers couldn't do anything else.
That you can make that argument too. All right, so tight ends on the board here. We got Noah Gray, we got Sinnott, we got Higsby, Chig, Juwan Johnson.
I mean, do we know who's going to be the tight end in Atlanta? I mean, knowing that we have Penix, like, is Pitts still going to be the tight end there? Are they going to take a rookie tight end? Feels like they're going to take a rookie tight end. Really feels that way.
Yeah, I mean, Pitts is obviously off the board already.
I know, but it really feels like they're going to take a rookie instead of dealing with Pitts.
But also, rookie tight ends don't normally materialize. We had one do it 2 years ago, and that was it.
Chig, I bet.
And then obviously we had the Bowers do it this year, but no tight end in this class is anywhere near Bowers' level of quality. You could have made the argument going into last year's draft, Bowers was the best offensive player entering that draft, and I did have him ahead of name.
I think we said that. But is Chig there? I mean, maybe you take a chance on a guy like Chig.
See, I'd rather have Stinnett and Disley than Chig.
I mean, it's okay. I mean, again, all these guys are the
and that's
same.
all quarterback based because Disley has Herbert.
Again,
it's 100% a quarterback decision.
I'm not up for arguing. I do like that Malik Washington pick. I think that's a really smart pick.
Hey, how do you feel about Arayu? He's a tight end. Maybe he'll be our last pick instead of Disley, but Stinnett's my pick here.
Okay. I mean, Again, guys, for me,
What does that website have Arroyo going at? He's a tight end.
Rookey?
Arroyo.
Arroyo.
Mm-hmm. He's the 35th tight end on their big board.
All right. What was his name? Eric?
Elijah
Arroyo.
I mean, if he's projected to be a second-round guy or better, I'll go with the rookie over Disley.
I mean, not many people take tight ends like that in the second round, though.
No, but that's the sign that he's actually legit.
All right, scouting profile. He is ranked he's ranked on NFL Draft Buzz as the 5th best tight end in the class.
Well, then no. We'll be taking Will Disley instead.
But other websites have him as a much better option.
Unless you have him as a clear 1 or 2, then he ain't going to do anything.
I mean, this other one has him at 4. They have the top. Most people have the 2 top tight ends as Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland.
Yeah, no question. Warren will be a dude, but he's not really a tight. Warren actually might be a cheat code moving forward. He might be a guy we want to target because Penn State literally didn't throw the ball to anyone else.
No, they didn't. I mean, he was on the field.
I mean, it was almost like Bowers.
A lot.
So maybe Warren should be a guy we project. Are we doing Wednesday or Thursday this week, Bob?
Wednesday's fine.
Right.
And just going over, we'll do an autopsy of this draft.
We're definitely doing that
to make sure that everybody who's watching right now sees the potential of the way you can navigate. Again, the reason we did this episode today was to make sure that you have all you need if you're walking into this draft and you want to look at a draft board and see, hey, I'm thinking about going late tight end. What kind of teams can I put together? Or I'm looking at building late quarterback. What kind of teams that can I put together? I love the Jackson Dart pick there, as I just said in that round. I think that if you are continuing to wait on tight ends or on quarterbacks, I think it's an option for you to do that as well. So we are going to do an autopsy of the draft once these last couple of picks moves on. Joe, if you can spread it out to all 12 teams so we can kind of see all 12 of them, that would be great.
The 12.
So, as we get into this last round, there's a lot of
our last picks Will Disley. Why don't we go back up here towards the top and you can't see the top round when I do it like that. Let's go towards the top and get a look-see at all.
So, as we think about, okay, where is our capability of moving out of this pod? Where are our advantages? Where are our disadvantages? If you're just joining us, we just did the
second pick overall is challenging. Just no way around it.
We just did an underdog best ball draft for the 2025 season, and we tried a late quarterback squad. Appreciate it, Austin. And in this strategy, what we were doing is we weren't looking at quarterback position until about the 10th round. You're going to notice as you build squads in these contests, there's a lot of conversations you can put yourself into in order to take a quarterback early. And I do think it is an advantage for you to take a quarterback early, and I will be taking quarterbacks a little bit earlier in future drafts.
Well, I think it depends on which quarterback you take early. I still think of the early ones, it should go Lamar and Daniels should be the rankings.
But here's the cost benefit analysis that you have to go through, right? And it was something we talked about last year, is that if you're building some of these early quarterbacks, you're also either going to have to force their weapons a little bit earlier, or you're not going to get their weapons at all. Building these late quarterbacks allows you the capabilities to do some stacks and do some stacks that are worth points. You can watch any content creator out there right now that are doing these best ball drafts, and they're going to point you in the direction of a stack, which I think is a great idea. And I think that there's a really good benefit to it here. But one of the things when you're building these big elite quarterbacks is it's going to be very hard or very gross to want to build the rest of this team. So, for example, we go to this Josh Allen team sitting here in the 9th position. He was able to build Khalil Shakir in the 7th round, which is great. I mean, that's kind of like the value that you want. And Josh Allen seems to be one of those quarterbacks that you can do it with. But when you look at the whole scope of everything, is that Josh Allen didn't really support any number 1 or number 2 wide receiver performances this year. So you're getting the value in Josh, but you are kind of taking a bath with Shakir unless it's a PPR league. If you're playing DraftKings PPR league, I think Shakir is a wonderful option. But I don't see significant value in a Khalil Shakir Buffalo stack. So if I'm taking one of these quarterbacks early, I'm most likely trying to take one of these athletic quarterbacks naked, or with a back end piece that I think could spike a good week. You go ahead and look at Lamar.
On the back end of Lamar is so easy to do.
You go ahead and look at Lamar, and they went with Mark Andrews, which is a great bet. I mean, that's a good combination to own, but there's no
receivers.
There's no definite piece that if I'm taking a tight end that early with a quarter, like if Lamar's best weapon is the tight end. But if I'm taking that tight end early, it also means that I'm sacrificing a wide receiver or another positional advantage.
Yeah, so we zoom in here on the number 12 guy. Yeah. Brian Thomas, King Henry, Lamar, Evans, Laporta, Monty. You have to start 3 receivers. You have to start 3 receivers. He hasn't even drafted his 3rd receiver until we get to the 11th round in Christian Kirk.
It's not a benefit to draft Christian Kirk, but you can
then Hollywood, like Amari Cooper. I'm not really loving. I think he doesn't have a 3rd receiver he wants to start any week.
You can see there is a benefit and a detriment to taking a Lamar Mark Andrews stack. And what we talked about this last year is that if you're taking a 1-1 kind of combination with the tight end, that it's a dangerous proposition.
You can't build a 2 tight ends in the top 7.
It's a dangerous proposition to put yourself into with that. But the likelihood that Mark Andrews or Sam Laporta would end up in a flex in Underdog is probably really good, knowing that they do project for tight ends.
And that's fine
in terms of touchdowns.
You still need to start 3 receivers.
So going then back against the grain here, I think that Patrick Mahomes in the 6th round is a good enough value. If you're willing to wait on a quarterback and wait until the 6th round to build up that roster, I do think that the 6th round would be a good position for yourself with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes didn't light up the world this year by any stretch of the imagination, but in these playoffs, starts show that he does want to run the ball a little bit more. They're a solid team. And it's not like they're going to automatically get like unsolid in the offseason. They're a solid team. You're not exercising the option that, you can't build a stack here. Like building a Xavier Worthy or a Rashee Rice with Patrick Mahomes is perfectly capable.
Can we just pause on Rice for a minute? I think that Rice is going to be one of the most interesting people.
I agree.
Of this draft. And the reason is talent-wise and production-wise, he would have been a top 5 fantasy guy this year. Mm-hmm. But we know he's not going to be healed, and he has that suspension looming. Mm-hmm. So I basically throw this is more of a suspension logistical question that I don't know the answer, Bob. Hopefully we can figure this out by the start of next week.
The answer yet.
If he's injured, do those count as suspended games?
I don't think so. They could.
I mean, because he has to be on the active roster. So I guess I know that part's true. A suspension can only count if he's on the active roster. It's more of a Chiefs logistical question. Say he gets a 4-game suspension. If you keep him on the active roster on day 1, you effectively have to do an extra cut.
Yeah, and there's plenty of players on the Chiefs roster you can cut. There's plenty of players on the Chiefs roster.
Well, it doesn't ever feel that way on roster creation day, the last day before the regular season starts. It never feels that way on cut day.
I mean, all things aside, I do think that if you're doing these early drafts and your aim is to take Patrick Mahomes in the 6th round, that it would be it would be smart for you to go after Rashi or Xavier Worthy in the fourth. We have seen consistently as we've done this draft that one of those wide receivers does go in the fourth round.
I want to also overall focus on this eighth guy because the guy who has Mahomes, the team.
Well, I'm just going through.
No, I get it, but I want to focus on this for a teaching point. If we look at the players he's taken, and again, we're doing these drafts right now before the NFL draft, actually before the Super Bowl.
And we're just dissecting one that we just did. If you just joined us now,
and as a general rule for dissection, I'm just going to go through his players. Collins obviously got injured, came back all right, justifies the first pick. McCaffrey, disaster town.
There's a lot of uncertainty in this.
Brown only got the job because of injury.
Joe,
the injury to Moss.
I'm with you. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Olave injured the whole year. Debo injured the whole year.
I mean, you don't need to.
The one thing I love about our team is that our team all securely has their position.
So we're team 2 if you're watching.
Yeah. Their team is like Bijan's number 1 by far. Bucky's the number. They all earn their place. And with the exception of Ayuk, none of them are coming off of injury.
Yeah. Back to the
you look at that
here.
Yeah. I just think that's a very important thing to realize why some of these teams are killing themselves before they start.
Well, I'm with you. I am with you on that, drafting injured players high, or drafting players coming off of significant injuries high. I'm totally with you, or uncertain situations, right? Chase Brown is not guaranteed to have the starting position. Many people think. But from a fantasy perspective, if he's on the field, he should be good enough. Third round, good enough? Maybe not.
Whoever Cincinnati's running back is going to be great. We just need to know who it is.
Chris Olave, if they get a quarterback and an offensive line, should be a really good value there in the 5th round. But
it's better. It's more likely Olave goes to a different team than they do that building. Right.
But back to these quarterbacks and saying, how these builds can look. Jaden Daniels we showed this to you last week as well. Jaden Daniels is a tough build. If you're stacking Jaden Daniels, you're stacking him with back end pieces, or you're pushing Terry McLaurin to your 2nd round pick. In these early best balls, if you want,
which also telegraphs that you're about to take Jalen Daniels, by the way, and everyone now knows it.
If you want Terry and Jaden Daniels, it's not going to happen unless Terry continues to fall, or unless the position of Jaden Daniels falls. But usually speaking, Terry McLaurin goes mid 3rd, and Jaden Daniels goes early 4th. So there is a realistic chance that that's not going to happen. So you're building a back end stack, and with the questions that they're going to have at wide receiver this year, they went out and got Luke McCaffrey this year. They had Diami Brown, Zacchaeus. They're probably going to take another rookie wide receiver. Maybe they make a splash with T. Higgins.
Oh, I think they're making a splash on Higgins.
There's a lot of questions.
Or maybe Devontae. They're getting a real stud there with Scary Terry.
There's a lot of question marks for you to build the stack with Jaden Daniels. So he's a really hard quarterback to stack with, but a very valuable one, probably to get at least 1 or 2 of his weapons. That's why a back-end Senate might be a good option as well. You can see here that this guy with Jalen Hurts, though, still took Jalen Hurts without any of the wide receivers. And I don't think that that's a bad call. An unstacked Jalen Hurts for DFS purposes has been relatively successful in the past for most people. This year, Jalen Hurts had a hard time spiking above 20 points most weeks. So his floor or his ceiling is very limited if you're going out and taking Jalen Hurts. Fantastic option on a week-to-week basis, but also you have to understand the limitations there with the team. Is while A.J. Brown is half the time he's the first read target, if you build that stack, you're also walking yourself into that could be a game where they rush for more touchdowns than they throw. And sometimes they'll rush with Saquon more than when they rush with Hurts. There's a lot of uncertainty with taking Jalen Hurts, but I think Jalen Hurts is an acceptable quarterback if you can build something with him later. And as it goes with Joe Burrow, I love Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is one of my favorite quarterbacks, but in the 4th round, you're only taking him if you're stacking Chase at the number 1 overall. But I think
which he did, which is why he took him, because he wasn't going to fall to him after the turn.
But I think honestly, it's a detriment to your overall team construction, because there are some other options there that I might want to take a gamble on. But again, with Joe
And
Burrow,
looking at
45
team one
touchdowns.
specifically here,
You can't really fight that. Now scroll down a little
and
bit.
my
So we can
problem
see
for
the
them
rest
is the
of these
running back room.
quarterbacks.
Kyron, you don't
Yeah,
know is a
it's
starter.
going to be issues.
Devontae Swift isn't a starter. Rico Dowdle, like this guy's
So
gonna be hurt a lot.
You see here, Joe. Stop at the 7th round. You see here, starting in the 7th round, you start to get your 8th round. You start to get your mid-range quarterbacks. And in my opinion, guys, unless I have a stack that I'm building out, I'm avoiding most of these quarterbacks at value. Unless I'm having a stack that I'm building out, again, it has to be stacked. I'm avoiding these quarterbacks at value. I get, Keenan Allen with Caleb Williams, but again, he's not guaranteed to stay there.
Keenan Allen's not going to be in Chicago next year.
So I'm avoiding Goff, Baker, Caleb Purdy, May, Herbert, Murray, and Bo. Maybe not Baker, but the rest of them at value unless I'm building a stack. Baker's kind of a wild card because Baker this year spiked a lot of 28 plus point games. And I do want to get my hand on a little bit of Baker, in some drafts. I'm avoiding Kyler Murray almost exclusively. He is one of the biggest avoids for me. Granted, with Marv another year, maybe the question mark isn't there, but where he really has his value is he needs multi-rushing touchdowns to really project high, and he just doesn't do it. Justin Herbert's another avoid for me unless I built Lad, which I think this guy did. Justin Herbert wasn't throwing for an insane amount of touchdowns or yards this year. I don't see that changing very much in the coming year based upon the way that the structure of the team is. Drake May, I think, is a little high. Drake May did have a couple of spike weeks in that mid-20s range, but I think that in terms of where that value sits at right there, I think that he a round or two later would be where I want to be at on Drake May. And Brock Purdy, I'm surprised actually Brock went in the 9th round. San Francisco had a lot of struggles this year, and I'm not sure that I see like a significant improvement with those struggles. And Brock Purdy has never really, he's had a couple spike weeks where he's thrown for like 4 or 5 touchdowns. But if it's a healthy Christian McCaffrey or a healthy running game, those spike weeks for Purdy are really dialed in. And I see the value for Purdy and Penix to be very similar. And I would rather have Penix in the 11th than Purdy in the 9th.
Absolutely. The only real late one bob down here in the 11th that I think that will be a winner of potential. There's 2 of them. I think that Dak and Stroud could each blow up next year. I think there's the potential for that.
So let's talk about it.
To me, is very skeptical.
Let's talk about these 11
from a team construction standpoint. The team that has Stroud and Anthony Richardson is also the team that drafted Mahomes. Like, what are you doing?
So here's the issue that I have with something like that. So if I take one of those big guys at the top end, I need to be really confident of their capabilities to spike 25 plus. I change that number a little bit every time.
Mahomes didn't do that very much this year.
If you're walking in just now, we're dissecting a draft that we just did, talking specifically about the quarterbacks. But here's the problem with what you're saying, Joe. And it's not a problem with what you're saying. It's a problem with the way this team is specifically constructed with Patty Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. Is that when you look at when you look at how these quarterbacks are structured, right? CJ Stroud this year never. I'm almost 1,000% sure that he never spiked over 20 points more than like one time.
He was never a top 10 quarterback this year. That is true.
With a really good offense, right?
His offensive line is horrible. I mean, the Texans, you can pretty much, that's what their resources are going into.
Right. I'm saying that from a wide receiver perspective, their wide receivers at certain points in time this season, it was a good squad, right?
Oh yeah.
So
hopefully Dell can come back.
He spiked to 23 and he had a 19 week 6, but usually he was in that like 11 to 19 range. You pull up Anthony Richardson. We all know the struggles of Anthony Richardson. I'm not even going to pull him up. We all know who he is. as a
Mm-hmm.
quarterback. I'm okay taking a dart throw on him in the 13th round. Like, that's not a question for me. Because he does have the capability to put up 30 points. But if you're only throwing the ball 15 times a game, it's not really like he needs to be throwing the ball 30 plus times a game. And if he's throwing the ball 30 plus times a game, there is no framework that Jonathan Taylor is going to also be on the field and rushing the ball 23 plus times.
The Colts have a very the Colts. No one wants to admit this, but the absolute best thing that can happen to Indianapolis is the Richard becomes a pass catcher and they draft a real quarterback, or they go and sign Sam Darnold. That's the only thing that can fix in Indianapolis. That Anthony Richards draft pick has submarined that franchise for half a decade, as long as they keep investing.
Let's talk Patty. Let's talk Patty for a moment, because I think this is a really good, at least a case study for this year. Week 17, he hit 26 points because he went over 300 yards passing and 3 touchdowns.
And he knew he had next week off.
Week 13.
Next 2 weeks off.
Week 13, he hit 300 yards passing, but only passed for 1 touchdown. And he's sitting there at about 16 points. Another week where he spiked, it was 3 touchdowns with it was 3 touchdowns with 33 yards rushing. It looks like here. No, with 60 yards rushing. So 6 extra points there. And he's not rushing for that many yards like in a game. So I'm going to pull that stat out, and that would have put him right around 22 points. So when you're if you're looking at a quarterback, and Patty Mahomes has a history of doing really, really well, but it seems like this team over the last couple of years has been changing. Pull that draft board back up again. I know we got to get going soon, but when you go back to 2023, we started to see this again, though, from Patty Mahomes. Is he had a 34-point week, and he started the season really hot with like a couple games above 20, but he hasn't really been a profitable quarterback from a fantasy perspective since 2022. Okay. I don't think it's smart to go after Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson, because where you look at where their floor and ceilings are, it seems like the way their team is constructed right now doesn't support a super high ceiling. And
you can make an argument this dude made the worst draft you could have made.
I don't want all 3 of them. I'm willing to take one of them. And I think at value that I would rather take CJ Stroud. At value, if I'm looking at Patrick Mahomes in the 6th or CJ Stroud in the 12th.
Stroud in the 11th? Stroud in the 11th is a very solid pick. I'm more likely
to want to take Stroud. Now, as for our quarterbacks, you're going to say, well, Bob, there's a lot of question marks with your quarterbacks as well. I get it. I'm there. I understand. But what I also understand is that, if we get, let's say we get
Penix, we took Penix because of the stack starting point.
Let's say we get 6 or 7 games out of our boy Tua. Okay. Let's say we get 6 or 7 games out of our boy Tua, and those are healthy, full games. Looking at the coach,
then those are going to be electric.
Tua this year, when healthy, had more games in the 20-point market than Patrick Mahomes in the 6th round. Okay. He was on the verge of spiking 30 points, especially if you use DraftKings. I believe he did have a couple of 30-point games. Going back to 2023, when fully healthy, he is a quarterback that is perfectly capable of spiking 20-plus point games week. He falls off as well, but again, I'm gonna say that 12th round, I'm okay with something like that. Penix as we talked about earlier in the draft, we went out, got Bijan first round, went in and got Darnell Mooney. And while Penix didn't prove to be super elite in his starts this year, you look at the last game of the year against Carolina, and again, it's against Carolina, and he was buoyed by a rushing touchdown as well. So I'm going to take this market down to, I'm going to leave that rushing touchdown out of it, and we'll just say his last game of the year was 20 points. Okay? 300 yards passing in each of his performances, over 200 yards passing where he got a full game, and he's providing you with the same kind of market as a CJ Stroud. So like those guys in that round are perfectly fine. And you have to think that if you're projecting Atlanta to do well this year, Bijan's probably going to do well. If Bijan's doing well, then Penix is doing well at the same point in time. There is a correlation to these two guys that I think. So just taking it as example, Joe, week 17, Penix went 19 for 35. So it's proven that they want to let him pass the ball. And Kirk Cousins was passing the ball a decent clip as well. And you go and you look at what Bijan's production was during those last 3 weeks of the season, particularly in like the passing market or in the receiving market here. My computer's running really slow, but I think that's where I'm looking at there with a guy like Penix. And as we've said before, guys, when it comes to Justin Fields in his games where he started, there's always a capability for Justin Fields to have a significant spike week. And when we talk about
let's read this roster off, Bob, so everyone, because reading it here can be a little bit rough. We have 3 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 8 receivers, 3 tight ends, which to me is like the golden ratio. The 3 quarterbacks being Penix, Tua, and Fields. Everything you just said about Fields is right. I mean, when we last saw him, he was a top 5 quarterback. When he was starting the whole season, and given a whole offseason, I'd see no reason he shouldn't be there again. I look at our running back room, and again, I love it. With Bijan, Bucky, Trayvon Henderson, Bigsby, Jordan Mason, and Jonathan Brooks.
There's a bit of uncertainty on if, like, let's say, for example, a player does get hurt. There is or there's a double, like we have multiple players on the bye that week. But what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at our running back room, and I'm asking myself, can those players hit 20 points fairly consistently? Because you are going to need between 15 to 20 points out of your running back.
And the cool part is with Bijan, you got one of them every week. Like Bijan, that's why Bijan is such a, to me, Bijan's the safest pick in this draft.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing about Justin Fields, Joe, is he does rely significantly on rushing numbers.
Sure.
That's fine. But the last 3 weeks or the last 4 weeks that we saw Justin Fields, week 3, 12, number 12 finish. Week 4, number 1 finish. Week 5, 16 finish. Week 6, 7th finish. And you're getting something like that in the 13th round. You know, I'm not trying to oversell Justin Fields, but I will say, you know, when you look back last year, and we were talking about the Raiders' uncertainty situation, guys like Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell, maybe they have a chance to spike. I mean, yeah, there was a totally, and we were talking about Bo Nix having the potential as well as past year as well. But Justin Fields is one of those guys that if you look at the quarterbacks in that round, you're looking at Shedeur, you're looking at Anthony Richardson, you're looking at Bryce Young, you're looking at JJ, you're looking at Justin Fields. Bryce Young, projectably, is going to do better. They do have what seems to be their shit together right now in terms of how they want to use Bryce Young.
I can't believe Carolina will ever have that. So
I'm saying on how to use him. Okay. I'm not saying that he's going to be a great player, but I'm saying that at the back end of the season that he had enough 20 plus point like starts.
Yeah, no, Bryce Young's certainly a guy worth looking into late. And quite frankly, had Tua not fallen to us, we probably would have taken Young and Fields to be totally blunt.
Well, I mean, if Xavier Legette would have fallen to us, we probably would have taken Legette and then Fields, maybe somewhere in there. Scroll down a little bit more. You know, so JJ McCarthy, there could be some value there. We were taking a lot of JJ McCarthy last year as well. If you're just tuning in, we're just dissecting one of the big best ball drafts that we were just in on Underdog, talking about why it is okay to wait on quarterbacks a little bit later. And then after that, you're looking at a real large amount of uncertain situations with these 4 quarterbacks here. Cam Ward ends up on, you know, New England, or not New England. It ends up on the Giants or Tennessee. You know, do we like those landing spots? Not really.
No.
You know, it's okay to take a chance on him.
I don't think the Giants are taking a quarterback. I think they're gonna free agent it.
You come down here, then you look at these other 3 quarterbacks. Matt Stafford is not ever going to hit your starting lineup. I mean, so guys, I'm gonna say it again. Matt Stafford is never going to hit your starting lineups. He was a waste of a pick. The skill position players are going to hit your lineups, but Matt Stafford does not hit the number that you want to have a winning best
Justice Hill's going in the 17th round, Bob. We got to start noting that.
Justice Hill in the 17th round, I think, is a solid option.
It is. It's better than Chubb.
Geno and Sam Darnold, their question marks come from what their situations are going to be like. If Sam Darnold stays in Minnesota, what's that going to look like? I'm not sure. Geno's situation with the offense coordinator, he was definitely, felt blackballed by having Grubb as the offensive coordinator there. There was significantly more passing options, less running options. But again, this didn't really translate enough weeks where Geno was like the pivotal option that you needed to win a week. I'm not saying he didn't perform adequately enough from a fantasy football standpoint. And if I'm getting them in the 16th round, sure. But you got to think to yourself, like, are they going to stick with him? And I don't see a reason to stick with him. And I don't necessarily see a reason to not stick with him. Again, week 18, week 16, week 9, week 5, week 4, he spiked over 20 points. I mean, again, I just read those off to you. And even with the situation as it is, if you're building these late quarterbacks, if you want Geno and you think he's going to be back in Seattle, hell, I can take Jackson Smith in the 4th round. I can take DK in the 5th round and just back my way into Geno and get a nice a nice double stack with maybe a tight end option that you think is going to be a safe option there. Again, I'm not saying that Geno is the guy that you want, but there are plenty of acceptable options. And then you have that back end of Jackson Dart as well that was in the later rounds. So if you're building a lineup, Joe, as you said earlier, Fields is a great target in these late quarterback strategies. I think it's smart to build Justin Fields because he's such an electric talent that even if he doesn't sign with the Steelers, he's most likely going to get a chance somewhere else to perform really well.
Where it goes, yeah.
You pair him with 2 stabler options at quarterback. And again, I'm not saying that Michael Penix is going to be like a superstar, but what I said to Joe is that if you can provide in the round that we drafted him in, if you can provide a decent floor of 2 touchdowns apiece, like 2 touchdowns in a game. And again, just looking here, week 7, Geno Smith, I'm just looking at a stat line from Geno, okay? 18 for 28, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, 15 yards rushing. That landed us at 17 points. You get that market up to maybe Penix gets 30 yards rushing, and you add in another touchdown. Well, now you're talking about 23 points in a round where the optimal person in that round probably is not going to ever score 23 points. From a positional standpoint. So I'm willing to in certain lineups take the bath on not taking Josh Allen. Although I do want to get a lot of Josh Allen. I do want to get a lot of Jane Daniels. I do want to get a lot of Joe Burrow. But I'm willing to take a chance on a rook on a guy like Penix or Fields, because they do have Penix has the situation to be successful. Justin Fields has the talent to be successful. And I think targeting those 2 guys late 10th round or below is smart. And again, Joe, you talked about a guy like Dak, right? A guy like Dak coming off a year where he got hurt, and, very disappointing for us because we had a lot of Dak. We were taking him decently early in some of the best balls that we were doing. But you profile him, and he had 1, 2, 3, 4 games in the top 15. Those 4 games, one of them was a 29.9. The rest fell below 20. But going back again to 2023, his last fully healthy season, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 top 10 finishes, 7 top 5 finishes. So, when you look at where those finishes were at points wise, all plus 24 plus, right? Anytime you finish it in that top zone, it's all 24 plus. So I think it's important for you guys to note. And if you didn't catch the whole draft and our conversation for that, go back and watch the episode. But again, set yourself a bar for what you want out of your quarterback point wise. Then look at the situation and say, can this quarterback achieve this point total more often than not? And I think you're probably going to walk yourselves into some things that we've been talking about today, where you're willing to take more chances on possible 15-plus pointer wide receivers than going with a quarterback like Jared Goff. And again, no hate against Goff. I love Jared Goff. But Jared Goff needs a lot of crazy things to happen despite the weeks that he had.
He does. Yeah. It's not realistic. It's just not.
It's not super realistic that you're going to see him throwing for almost 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. It's also not realistic that he's going to hit that 400-yard mark with 4 touchdowns and 21 yards rushing, right? So is he capable of doing it? Absolutely. Has he done it in the past? Absolutely. Hey, family. But I would definitely stress that this point total that I'm suggesting to you guys of 24, 25, 28 is the optimal number that I want to try to get to. But if you're hovering around that 25, 26 points on a fairly consistent basis, or you're spiking, or your consistent basis is plus 19, like between 19 and 24, it's one of those things that I think that we need to look at. Family, I hear that, man. I hear that. But we are going to be back on Wednesday. We're going to try a new strategy. Feel free to leave it in the chat. We'll watch.
Yeah, we'll do dealer's choice on the strategy as far as what we're doing next week.
Go back and watch the video today, family, especially if you missed anything. We did a quarterback. We started in the 10th round getting quarterbacks. We took a tight end a little bit early, backfilled the rest of the tight ends. I think you're going to like what we put together, family. And it's just another learning experience to see, okay, where are my options at? Because this is going to build us into, as we go through this season of best balls, it's going to build us more knowledge about where we can get certain players at, how we can, wait on certain guys, and maybe Joe, maybe next time we try to get a Kansas, like a Kansas City stack, or we play into that, or we play into the Houston stack, knowing that we can get CJ Stroud so late. If we're sitting in the market to get a Nico,
the problem with the Houston Stroud is they're against all of our rules. They're all injured. You know what I mean?
I get it. No, but I'm saying, like, if you want,
and I also don't know who the running back is, because Houston's almost certainly replacing the running
back. I'm saying if we're sitting in the mid first round and Nico's staring us in the face and CD already went off the board, maybe that would be the time that we are flexible enough to build a CJ Stroud in the 11th or 12th round.
It's the time of the year. It's just hard to know at this. These pre-draft best balls are great in that way.
Family. Our quarterbacks starting in the 10th round. We went quarterback 10th, 11th, 12th round, I believe. Or 11th,
it was
12th,
Penix,
13th
Tua,
round.
and Fields.
Yeah, Penix, Tua, and Fields. And the reason, you can go back and watch why we took Penix. Tua was a pick based upon our stacks. We ended up with Tyreek and Jonnu, so he was part of our stack. And then we built a back end Fields because we did have a George Pickens. But I agree. Someone is watching. CJ Stroud is gross. But again, if I can get him much later, I don't see him popping off. As I said earlier about that, it's just, as I said, right, Joe? It's all about where is that 20 points or 22 or 24 points coming from. Matt Stafford.
And obviously, once the schedule comes out, we will be able to nail that stuff in just like we did last year. On that note, Bob's got himself a best ball here still alive in the Super Bowl that we're super excited. We'll be breaking that down next week as well.
Got you.
We will see you guys here as family here just blew up the chat at the end. Next time, guys, feel free to chat us throughout the performance. We know we had some of them do it. We will be with you guys on Wednesday.
And make sure to go back and watch, like, follow, subscribe. We'll be back on Wednesday, 3:45 Eastern Standard Time. And if you have any ideas for the strategy that you want to see on Wednesday, feel free to leave it in the chat or leave a comment, and we will make sure to do that strategy on Wednesday.
Welcome to Local Football Flavor, connecting the fan bases of the NFL.